Long before history was recorded, humans have looked for answers to many questions that are still largely debated. One of these questions has been, what is real? Or how should one perceive reality? While many philosophies have tried to answer this, the ones that Westerners are most familiar with are wrapped up in words and definitions, which can only explain so much. While words are very important tools for communication, they can also act as immense obstacles in our way of perceiving reality. Few Western philosophies have bothered to make an attempt to circumvent this problem of words and labels. Of those that have, the most successful and widespread is general semantics, which was founded by Count Alfred Korzybski. While general semantics is a philosophy that deals with the way in which humans evaluate all types of situations in mathematics, science, etc., at its core lies what Korzybski called nous, or non-Aristotelian thinking. Korzybski's defining of nous came from his studies on how Albert Einstein thought. Korzybski wanted to find the key that Einstein had that allowed him to unlock all of the scientific doors he did during his life. In this video, we will first examine nous through a model Korzybski called the structural differential. Then we will move on to see what else can be inferred from this model about nous. After the basic ideas of nous are laid out, we will move into a comparison between Zen Buddhism and nous, using Zen koans as the inroad, and then attacking more direct verbal comparisons. Although nous involves rather simple concepts, it can be extremely difficult for people of Western education to wrap their minds around as a result of how label and word-based their thinking is. Korzybski did not have any religious or spiritual intent with his philosophy. Eastern philosophy and religion, Buddhism, and more particularly Zen Buddhism, can serve as excellent lenses to look through while attempting to unwrap the secrets nous holds. Moreover, studying nous in relation to Eastern philosophies allows one to get new and interesting perspectives on them as well. Before jumping into any sort of contrasting and comparing between these philosophies, the basic principles of nous must be laid out. In order to quickly gain an understanding of nous, Korzybski suggested that one use what he called the structural differential. While nous cannot be so quickly explained to its fullest extent, it is still important to have a basic understanding of the structural differential. Korzybski used three-dimensional diagrams in his structural differential, but a two-dimensional diagram should serve its basic function adequately. Since general semantics attempts to show the practitioner the difference between the verbal way of thinking and non-Aristotelian thinking, which is highly visual, a glance at this diagram of the structural differential will make it obvious how important it is to understanding nous. This uppermost object of the diagram represents all of the macroscopic and microscopic characteristics of an object, and the swirls represent the infinite nature of those characteristics. Below this are three circles, the first of which represents the object at the everyday level. Korzybski, in his models of the structural differential, groups all three of these circles together in one and simply labels them the object. But seeing what allows one to sense an object visualized separately is of great help in understanding nous. This object and its infinite characteristics are, as seen in the diagram, at the non-verbal level. This level includes what is real, what Korzybski refers to as the unspeakable objective level. The three tag-shaped objects below are referred to as abstractions. The first tag represents the label or word one applies to a given object. In this example, an orange is used, and the example label, the most common way one would usually refer to his object, is orange. The next two tags are higher level abstractions of the orange. The examples given are grow and agriculture. As seen, all three of these abstractions are at the verbal level, or the unreal. Here one runs into possibly the most important concept in nous. These abstractions are at the non-verbal level, or the unreal. The verbal level is referred to here as the unreal because these abstractions are not and never can be the object or objects they are referring to. The lines dangling from each object in the diagram represent that there are characteristics in each piece of the structural differential above another that are not in the object below. This also reinforces the idea that the abstractions are not the piece, nor are they each other, and are truly not real because they do not include every characteristic of what they refer to. Now that the basic details of the structural differential have been explained, there are a few rules related to it that should be understood. The order in which verbal Aristotelian thinking occurs is prone to many falsities. The proper order that should be used in nous is to see, pause, feel, sense, intuit, visualize, and then only later, after carefully doing all of these, should the mind verbalize. Most Aristotelian thinkers will see something, then straightaway verbalize and label it by noticing some similarity to something that they have seen or experienced in the past and think they know it. Visualization is obviously vital to nous, as its goal is to be a supremely accurate language for translating reality to the mind. Every object has infinite characteristics on the macroscopic, microscopic, and submicroscopic levels. Most of these characteristics are unknown to humans, so they are not included in the labels given to an object. These left-out characteristics are integral to the object and indicate that each abstraction should never be mistaken for another, just like an object should not be mistaken for the label one gives it. Now, with the basic understanding of nous, one can begin to look at similarities between non-Aristotelian thinking and Zen Buddhism. When doing this, one should take into account the angles from which each of these philosophies is approaching the concept of reality. Nous is seemingly coming from an angle of scientific rigor, while Zen seems to come from a much more intuition-based perspective. This difference is in no way debilitating to the comparison. In fact, it only makes looking at these philosophies doubly informative in light of each other. To begin looking at this comparison, a short anecdote should serve well. In Robert Anton Wilson's book, Quantum Psychology, he writes of a young American, Simon, who is studying Zen. During Simon's studies, he came across Franz Kafka's The Trial, and was completely thrown off by a parable Kafka inserts near the end of the novel. Simon found this parable so disturbing that his concentration in Zen studies was almost completely exhausted. The parable goes as follows. A man comes to the door of law, seeking admittance. The guard refuses to allow him to pass through the door, but says if he waits long enough, maybe, someday, in the uncertain future, he might gain admittance. The man waits and grows older. He tries to bribe the guard, who takes his money but still refuses to let him through the door. The man sells all his possessions to get money to offer more bribes, which the guard accepts, but still does not allow him to enter. The guard always explains, on taking each new bribe, "I only do this so that you will not abandon hope entirely." Eventually the man becomes old and ill, and knows that he will soon die. In his last few moments he summons the energy to ask a question that has puzzled him over the years. "I have been told," he says to the guard, "that the law exists for all. Why then does it happen that, in all the years that I have been waiting here, nobody else has ever come to the door of law?" "This door," the guard says, "has been made only for you, and now I am going to close it forever." And he slams the door as the man dies. The more Simon mulled over the parable, the more he felt as though he would never truly understand Zen. He could not figure out why any of what happened in the parable did. On the edge of a mental breakdown, Simon approached his Roshi with his problem and pleaded for him to explain it. His Zen teacher agreed to explain the parable if Simon would follow him to the meditation hall. When the student and teacher reached the meditation hall, the teacher quickly stepped inside and slammed the door in Simon's face. According to Wilson, at that moment, Simon experienced awakening. Right away, one might not see the connections between the story of Simon and nous, but they are definitely there. Simon's Roshi's reaction to his question was very much in line with a Zen koan, or the answer to one. Just like a koan, the Zen teacher's response was meant as a way to break down mental obstacles and remove the student from his reliance on verbal rationality and bring him closer to reality. This aim of Simon's teacher's reaction and Zen koans is the exact aim of nous. This aim is just fulfilled through different means in each case. There are many other similarities between Zen and nous, one of which can be seen when looking at Zen koans. Zen Buddhists consider the first koan to be the flower sermon as given by the Buddha. As the story goes, when the Buddha was asked what reality was, he picked a flower from the ground and held it above his head and smiled at his head disciple. The flower is completely beyond words. It is in Korzybski's level of the unspeakable. The flower was not and could not have been spoken about. The disciple only sensed, intuited it, felt it, and visualized it. Through this, the disciple was awakened and brought closer to reality. While in the story of the flower sermon, the disciple attains enlightenment